Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's video, I'll be running through my team selection ahead of Game Week 4 with the big question looming over me, whether or not I want to press the free hit button this week. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video on my channel. Today, we're going to be running through my team selection ahead of Game Week 4 and the key question, whether or not I feel like it's necessary for me to be hitting the free hit chip this week. I'll look through all my transfer plans if I didn't hit the chip, and of course, best captains and a few other bits and bobs along the way. So if you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and importantly, subscribe to the channel as we chase down 5,000 subscribers. First off though, let's have a look at my team as it currently is set up ahead of Game Week 4. I think on paper, it's a team that I'd have been relatively comfortable playing if I had a couple of free transfers or if I didn't have any issues to deal with in my starting 11. But as it is, Sarr, unfortunately, is flagged against Sunderland at home. Otherwise, would have absolutely loved having him for this week. He seems like a significant doubt going into Game Week 4. And Strand Larsen as well puts a little spanner in the works, who's still flagged after the international break, both of which pulled out of international duty. Strand Larsen, I think, is more likely to play. But even if he did, it's not a great fixture away at Newcastle anyway. And honestly, ideally, I would have wanted him first on my bench this week and probably playing a 4-4-2 if I used free transfers. So ideally, Sarr would have been fit, and I probably would have been looking at replacing Murillo with someone like a Munoz or a Lacroix, for instance. We'll go into those transfer options in a moment. And playing a 4-4-2 with a Palace defender in there, and Sarr also with a great fixture at home to Sunderland. Outside of the two flagged players, I don't hate any of the picks I've got this week. I just don't think many of them are necessarily who I would be going for if I was free hitting. They're all like maybe one tier down. I think I could make peace with it if Sarr was fit and I didn't need to use several free transfers to get to a side that I was happy with. But because I've only got one free transfer and because of those two injury doubts, it does make the free hit quite tempting to use this week. Objectively, though, my defense and my goalkeeper are absolutely fine this week. Then none of which are in the top few sides for clean sheet odds, but they're not far off, and a lot of them have other routes to points. Porro's got great attacking upside. Tarkowski and Anderson both good on the defensive contributions. Sanchez and Chelsea have been good defensively this season. And in the midfield, I've got the captain I would want in Salah. Bruno's never a bad pick, even away at Man City, and Ndai's been in great form so far against a struggling Villa. Up front, if I was to play that 4-4-2 or even a 3-4-3 with Strand Larsen in there, I don't think any of those picks are bad picks. In fact, João Pedro would probably be in on a free hit for me. But Watkins has been in a faltering Villa side, and away at Everton, who are historically a decent defence, also gives me a direct matchup between Tarkowski and Watkins, so it's unlikely that both of them get a big return. And then Strand Larsen, of course, away at Newcastle, even if he is fit, probably not ideal. Now, again, because I've only got one free transfer, if both Sarr and Strand Larsen are major doubts, then I'm probably relying on either Anderson or Murillo to come off my bench and play against Arsenal away from home, which again is not ideal. So although I think if the free hit wasn't an option, I'd probably be relatively comfortable to just say, okay, it's not a week that I'm really attacking. I'm going on the defensive, just try and survive the game week and get out with a grey arrow or maybe a small green if I'm very, very fortunate. But given that there are plenty of good fixtures to target, Liverpool away at Burnley, Crystal Palace against Sunderland, Arsenal against Nottingham Forest, Man City against Man United, Newcastle as well against Wolves at home, and I barely have any coverage in any of those fixtures, it does make the free hit quite tempting because it looks likely that Strand Larsen won't be an issue in Game Week 5. Sarr probably won't be an issue for too much longer, although he might still be out or a major doubt going into Game Week 5. But my side looks pretty okay in Game Week 5 and possibly even Game Week 6. So a free hit might be a decent route to consider to just attack this game week. There aren't many other free hit windows that I love more than free hit 4. I do like free hit 6. I also quite like free hit 15 way off in the future, but who knows what's going to happen by that point in time. So it is very tempting to use the free hit, but I can also arguably see this team doing okay this week. I just think the upside's slightly lower than if I attacked all of those great fixtures that I'm currently not getting any exposure from. And with the one free transfer to use, it's very unlikely that I can go on the aggressive this week. And I'm kind of hoping that none of those teams have a big day or a good day at the office. So that seems quite unlikely. And it feels like if I don't make any sort of significant moves, I'm probably looking towards a pretty average, if not quite terrible week if things go against me. So free hit is tempting, but let me know what you think of my team in the comments below. And let's move on to best captains very, very quickly, just to tick that off. Then we'll move on to my potential transfer routes if I wasn't to free hit as well. Okay, so I've skipped my weekly captaincy video this week because honestly, it seemed like a pretty obvious decision to me. So I'm just going to quickly summarize my rankings so that we can move forward with the series after this week. But I've been doing a weekly series where I pick out my favorite captain for the week and I'm tallying up the total to see how I do across the season. So far, I've got 2 returns from the opening 3 game weeks, so not a bad rate of returns just yet, but we'd like to improve on that, of course. And this week, I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that I would be picking Salah as my favourite captain for this week. Although, to be fair, I don't think Haaland is a million miles off at home to Man United. He's in scintillating form. And the best way that I'd summarise it is, most people only have one of Salah or Haaland. Whichever one you do have, I think it's a great captain for this week. If you've got both, it's a tricky call, but I'd maybe marginally prefer Salah given it is against a very weak opponent in Burnley. And although Salah's not looked as good as Haaland so far, I think the opposition is that far worse that it would probably push me towards Salah. He's also got more routes to points as well. He's got the clean sheet point that he might get. He's got the extra point for a goal. So Salah, I think the upside is slightly higher, but only very slightly. I'd be going Salah slightly over Haaland, and then there's a big drop off to what I'd consider the 3rd place position between a Gyökeres, maybe a Mateta as well. Both on penalties, both got good opponents to go up against this week, both at home as well. So not bad differentials, but I wouldn't be captaining either of them ahead of Haaland or Salah. So very, very marginally, Salah for me is my favourite, and he'll be the one that I carry through on the captaincy matrix this week. Okay, so before I have a look at my free hit side going into game week 4, as I haven't pressed any buttons yet, I'm still considering using transfers instead. A quick summary of the 3 options I'm most highly considering. Option 1 would be to remove Ismaila Sarr if I believe that he's out for a little while longer. The 3 options I'm most closely considering or most highly considering are Paqueta at home to Spurs, Barnes at home to Wolves, and Reinders at home to Man United. Now, Reinders' data is not fantastic at the moment, but I think he's going to have a good day at the office against Man United. Cherki is out for a couple of months, so they're probably going to need to rely on Reinders that little bit more. And it does save me quite a lot of money to use elsewhere in future game weeks. So I'm not ruling him out. I would quite like Barnes, but after what Howe pulled in the previous game week with moving around the formation, I'm just less secure or less confident on his minutes moving forward. And it is a very short-term move. After Wolves is out the way, it's not going to be long before we question whether or not he's got a regular starting place, and his minutes will take a bit of a nosedive with Gordon coming back in. Of course, they'll integrate the new signings as well. So all of that combined makes Barnes maybe a good free hit pick, potentially, but less of a good transfer in. Paqueta, I think he's got the routes to points, so he's got penalties, he's getting good minutes, good underlying data, not bad fixtures either, and when you've got a penalty taker under 6 million, it's always going to be tempting. So those would be my 3 options to directly replace Sarr. But I think option 2 would be the more likely route I take this week, considering the clean sheet odds for Palace, Newcastle, Arsenal, Liverpool are all really high this week. And I've got the money to get to any of them in one free transfer. Away from Murillo, switch to a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2. And then I bring in most likely one of the Crystal Palace boys instead of Murillo at home to Sunderland. I think it would be quite nice to cover off a little bit of the Palace defence there. Now, I think if it was only about this game week alone, I'd probably favour Munoz. I do prefer him over Lacroix. But mapping forwards, if I'm looking at potentially a future transfer in game week 5 to attack a bench boost, possibly, then if I went with Lacroix or even went down to Richards or Gahey, then I've got the money to upgrade Ismaila Sarr, if he's still a doubt going into game week 5, all the way up to a Gakpo or a Semenyo in game week 5 and then bench boost with that. So it is on my mind that instead of going for the player I'd prefer this week, which is Munoz, to potentially downgrade the position, go with Lacroix. It's great on DEFCON, good attacking threat from set pieces, and then it gives me the funds to maybe break glass in case of emergency. If Sarr is still unfit and can't play in game week 5, then I can transfer him out for free to get to Semenyo or Gakpo, for instance. A few other options in there as well, which we'll explore next week. But it gives me more room for maneuver in game week 5 to attack a bench boost and get it out of the way before I want to wildcard. The other option is perhaps a Gabriel at home to Nottingham Forest, but that would be more tempting if I felt that it was likely that I was going to free hit in game week 6 and probably wildcard a lot later on in game week 13, which is the original plan. And I'm not ruling that out altogether at the moment, but given the amount of issues I've got to deal with at the moment, I think realistically it's more likely that I bring forward the wild card to game week 7 or maybe even game week 6, which would make Gabriel a much less powerful pick because after Nottingham Forest, there are 2 weaker fixtures in game weeks 5 and 6. So less point in bringing him in now if I know I'm going to wildcard sooner. So most likely, I think Munoz or Lacroix. If I'm determined to get the bench boost out of the way before a wildcard, then Lacroix is probably the option, just so I've got that safety net so I can maneuver a little bit with Sarr to someone a bit more expensive next week. But if I don't fancy the bench boost before a wild card, or if I'm unsure, then Munoz would be the out-and-out preferred pick in defense this week if I'm replacing Murillo. There is an option to take a -4 hit, but I've gone off of that. I just don't think the upside's worth it. Sarr and Murillo both out for Semenyo and Lacroix, effectively doing what I've just discussed all in one move this week, but taking the -4 to do so. I just don't think it's worth the upside, and just going with Semenyo maybe next week or Gakpo instead, because a decent enough fixture against Everton that week for them might be the better option there. So those are the 3 options. I think option 2 is the most sensible or the most likely to happen right now. But let's have a look at my free hit as it currently stands if I were to press those buttons. So a quick look back at my free hit side ahead of game week 4 if I were to activate the chip. I did make a full video on free hit earlier in the game week. So if you want a full breakdown of every single player here, then please do go check that out if at all possible. I think it's all still completely relevant and affordable. I've got nothing extra or spare in the bank for maneuver here. So if any of these players go up, then I'm going to be priced out of it. However, I've got a few options on the bench I can downgrade. Reinders could be downgraded to a Dewsbury Hall, and I don't think I'm losing that much from my bench 1 position, and it would make all of this affordable and give me a bit more breathing space. I've got all of the top 4 defences in terms of clean sheet odds covered off for this game week if I did free hit with this side. Double Palace defence, 1 Newcastle, 1 Arsenal, 1 Liverpool. In the midfield, I do want double Liverpool attack, so Gakpo's in alongside Salah. I don't hate Wirtz either, but Wirtz is a little bit more expensive, and it would mean that I downgrade most likely that Semenyo position to someone with a little bit less upside for this game week, possibly Harvey Barnes if I felt that he started or felt confident that he'd get very good minutes. I'm relatively confident, but when you're on a free hit, I just don't want to take those risks. So I think Gakpo's got slightly more attacking or goal threat than Wirtz anyway, and Semenyo also probably matches Barnes for goal threat, attacking threat in my mind for this game week regardless. So that's the structure I've gone with in midfield. Up front, I've gone with Mateta, Gyökeres, and João Pedro. I'm still very bullish on Gyökeres at home to Forest, especially under the new coach Ange Postecoglou, who will probably try and instill a higher line. Maybe not from the first game week, but there will be new methods and styles and strategies of play that he will want to be implementing. Gyökeres might be able to take advantage of that. He's on penalties. He'll get 80 to 90 minutes. Same goes for Mateta. João Pedro's minutes should be very secure. Even with international duty, he's had enough time, and he didn't really play that many minutes in the final game of the international break. So I think he'll be fine to play. And Brentford away from home seems like a good fixture as well. So I think this is a nicely balanced free hit side that covers off a couple of the higher owned players that would otherwise do damage to me if I went against them. But I think Salah is the best captain. I would love Haaland on a free hit as well, but I just don't think I can have both Salah and Haaland, considering the amount of other downgrades I'd have to make elsewhere. I think Haaland is better than any of the strikers I've got for this game week, but is he that much better that it's worth 5 million extra than Gyökeres, and therefore taking 5 million out of the other positions here? I'm not sure that the accumulation of point benefit from the upgrades I can make elsewhere are worth it. So I think this is a more well-rounded side, but I can completely see the argument for going with Haaland as well, because if he absolutely bags against Man United alongside Salah, and both of them get hat-tricks, let's say, then that's going to be a better alternative to free hitting than this one. However, I think this is well-rounded. I think it covers off all the bases nicely. And if you wanted a more detailed breakdown, do make sure you go check out my video earlier on in the game week. Right then, so this video is kindly sponsored by Club, which is another fantasy game that I'm playing this season. I was also playing it last season as well, which is why my squad is a little bit more built up than some others who are playing the game at the moment. The budget is up to 33.5 million, which I'm really proud of. It means that I've got quite a strong squad. Although, having said that, there's no guarantee that that means a good points return this game week. And trust me, I know I've had plenty of shockers with very good looking squads. I've loaned in Salah, Gyökeres and Caicedo for this week, which I think is a relatively decent shout. So fingers crossed it does okay. But given that we've got the opportunity for Manny to give us another player, I thought we'd check one out live on stream now. So I'm going to meet him, see what goes on. Hopefully it's a decent player, but sometimes the core players are pretty good. It's gone past rare. It's elite, which is very, very good. Forward, who's it going to be? Villa. Is it going to be Watkins? I think. Watkins, not bad, although to be fair, not a great start to the season. I've got him in my own FPL side at the moment, and I'm considering free hitting away from him. So maybe not a player I'm overly keen on having for this game week, although you do have a contract to have him for 3+ game weeks. So I might just decide later on that and see if there's a way of squeezing him onto my bench for this week and having him for a good run of fixtures where I think they go up against 2 promoted clubs in the next 3 game weeks after this one is out of the way. So he can sit in my reserves for now, potentially. But as always, if you did want to get involved with Club, I've got my own mini league. And again, all of the links are in the description below. It's not too late to join because it's a head-to-head weekly mini league. And effectively, you've got the chance to both rise up the rankings in the leaderboard, but also take people on week to week and rise up that way as well. So it's not too late to join. It's completely free to do so as well. So if you did want to, the links are all in the description below. Okay, so back to my team going into game week 4. If I wasn't to activate my free hit, I think this is probably the most likely shape that the team would take, which I don't think is all that bad. It's just maybe not taking advantage of some of the better fixtures this week. I think most likely my move at time of recording would be Murillo down to Lacroix, Sunderland at home, defensive contributions monster. Maybe I get lucky with a set piece goal from him. Move to 4 at the back with 3 in midfield, 3 up top. And realistically, I would probably start Sarr just on the off chance that I get lucky and he does play over Strand Larsen. But more realistically, Strand Larsen probably is the one that actually ends up playing and it ends up being a 4-3-3. Now, of course, Strand Larsen is a doubt himself. So it might end up being that I have to rely on Anderson on my bench, currently second on my bench away at Arsenal, which is not at all ideal, but fingers crossed that Sarr is okay, and then I've got a lot less problems to worry about going into this game week. Otherwise, like I mentioned at the top of the video, I'm not overly disappointed with the rest of my squad. I just don't think any of them are necessarily the ideal players to have in any of the positions. None of the best 4 defenses covered off for this game week, but all of them that I'm playing are okay. Obviously, Lacroix coming in does give me one of them, actually. In midfield, Fernandes and Dye might squeeze in on a free hit for some, but I don't think he's a player that I would necessarily pick on a free hit. Fernandes is never a bad option. I've got captaincy covered. And then in my forward line, Watkins hasn't been brilliant and away at Everton, and João Pedro admittedly is probably absolutely fine for this game week as well. But it also means I'm using a free transfer. I would only have 1 free transfer to potentially deal with Sarr next game week. And I might look at bench boosting, even with double Everton away at Liverpool, just to get it out of the way. And Tarkowski's good enough on defensive contributions. He might get 3 or 4 points from that. And who knows, he might bag a goal or an assist if I get lucky, and therefore the bench boost is done and I can look at wildcarding without having to worry about what I'm going to do for a bench boost in future game weeks. So that's my side as it currently looks, or could look, going into game week 4 if I was to just use the free transfer. You've of course already seen my free hit side if things look a little bit more problematic, and Sar's out, Strand Larsen's out potentially as well, I think that free hit is looking mighty tempting. Now, of course, I've got a live stream to run before the deadline as well. So Friday evening, I'll be live streaming, where we'll be after all the press conferences. So I'll have a bit more information, hopefully, on Ismaila Sarr and Strand Larsen, and I can make a bit more of an informed decision and run through some of your questions going into Game Week 4 as well. So do join me over there tomorrow evening. And of course, if you did enjoy today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And for now, I'll see you next time.